Okay, so a little bit more about the container in this lecture, in this video. So the container we talked about, it runs in its own namespace, right? So the concept of namespace is, and cgroups was introduced because these are the features of the Linux kernel. And namespace is it isolates the processes running on a system. So in this, on the right side, I have, let's say, two containers, and these are running on the host, a VM. Now, if you see, right, the namespace, each of them is running in their own namespace, and it's controlled by cgroups. Cgroups is the control of resources like memory and CPU. So this, they can be limited. So as soon as the container exceeds the limit that's assigned to it, it will be the operating system will kill it. Um, so the container runtime will kill it, right? So basically, if a container is running with the process ID 1, if you exec inside the container, if you do a ps minus ef, you'll see the process ID. And the container runs as root unless you specify, which is a security risk. So you have to specify a user and add group to make sure that it has its own user ID and user ID and group. So if container 1 is running as a PID 1, and container 2 will also be running as PID 1. But if you do a PS minus EF on the node, they will be different PIDs. So that's how it controls the containers, the operating system. So let me show you this exactly how it works on a system. Okay, so let me see what is running right now. PS, I have a busybox container running. Let me see. I made it sleep for some time. Yes, it's been running since 90 minutes. So this is the container running on this node. Okay, so the container ID is 815. Now, if I exec into that container, sh, this is the whole busybox container, right? If I see I have some stuff in here, I'm inside the container. Now, if I do a ps minus ef on it, there's only one process because it's just sleeping, right? And the shell, and that is running as a process ID 1. Now if I go outside and if I do a ps minus if on the node itself, it should be a busybox process. So you see that my busybox process is running on side as root, and it has a different PID. So that's how, so PID is inside the container is 1, but outside it is somewhere else, but it's running as root. So this container is very powerful, and if somebody gets access, then they will have root privileges. So this is how the mapping works. And the next thing I want to show is that how you change the user ID. So because the namespace user IDs are controlled within the namespace, I can use a command called run add user within my Docker file, and then I can run my container again, and then it should have a different user ID. So let me show you that. Okay, so let me show you my Docker file. So this is the Docker file, the same busybox. It's the latest images, but I added the command called add group and add user. I just created a dummy app user inside it, and I just want to sleep it. So I'm going to build it. What was my command? Yeah, so I'm going to build it. I'm just putting a tag of minus of my busybox, and then I'm going to run it. So this is on one of the nodes in the cluster. So see it makes those layers, and it's going to be ready in a minute. Okay, so it's tagged. Now if I want to run it, I'll just do run my busy box. That's my image name. I'm going to run it, as simple as that. Now because I put a sleep statement, it's going to be like this. Right now if I do sudo docker ps and I grep for my busy box, it's running. So if I exec inside it, 1e4 sh. Okay, if I do ps minus ef, you can see that my sleep command is still running, but my container has user of app user. So initially earlier it was root, now it's changed to app user. So this by simply adding the users in the Docker file, the container can be made to not run as root, but it can be made to run as app user. Yeah, and if you see on the node, so the process that was running inside the container was sleep 60. So if you see, the user ID is 1001 and it's not root anymore. So this 1001 user ID was created by the kernel and it mapped the app user to that user ID.